Between the Waves, The Hidden History of a Very British Revolution, 1945 to 2016, by Tom McTague, read by Eliot Chapman. It is mad to believe in astrology, that is to say, in the sciences that judges future events. The science is either completely false, or else the things necessary for its practice are unknowable or unattainable by the human mind. But the result is the same. To think one can know the future by that means is a dream. Francesco Guicciardini, Maxims and Reflections. In political activity, then, men sail a boundless and bottomless sea. There is neither harbour for shelter, nor floor for anchorage, neither starting place nor appointed destination. The enterprise is to keep afloat on an even keel. The sea is both friend and enemy, and the seamanship consists in using the resources of a traditional manner of behaviour in order to make a friend of every hostile occasion. Michael Oakeshott, Rationalism in Politics and Other Essays. Part 1. The End of All Our Exploring. Introduction. Algiers in late 1942 was a city on the edge, a bustling hive of intrigue and ambiguity, espionage and violence. Formerly, the city still remained part of Vichy France, locked in a collaborationist embrace with Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany. Yet, in reality, like much of North Africa, it had long since fallen to the Allies. The result was an equivocal mess of competing loyalties and aspirations. Portraits of Marshal Philippe Pétain were still on public display across the city, and Vichyite thugs roamed the streets looking for Jews, even as General Dwight Eisenhower and his Allied forces took up residence and French resistance units continued to plot and to rage. The cause of this strange, uneasy state of affairs was the presence of one man, Admiral François Darlan, the Marshal's second-in-command, who happened to be in Algiers visiting his sick son when the Allied invasion began, or so he claimed. The British and Americans had hoped to install another French general, Henri Giraud, yet almost immediately after landing in North Africa, it had become clear that he did not have the authority to command the 125,000 French forces still in the region whom the Allies wanted to avoid fighting. The British and Americans needed to move quickly if they wanted to force a French ceasefire. The US General Mark Clark was given the go-ahead to negotiate with Darlan directly, wresting from the French commander a formal order to his troops not to resist the Allies, issued in the name of the Marshal back in France. Though this order was swiftly disowned by Pétain himself, it worked. Suddenly, the Allies could advance on the Germans, and fast. As a result, however, the Allies were now working with a regime that had not formally broken with the collaborationist government in France. For the British, this was calamitous. For the past 2 years, Winston Churchill had held up an entirely different man as leader of the real France, the Free France, Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle was untarnished by collaboration, having fled France in 1940, refusing to accept the terms of Pétain's surrender. Despite being little more than a junior member of the last government of the Third Republic, de Gaulle had grown into something much more than this in London, an emblem of France unbowed and unbroken. With his broadcasts on the BBC, he had held up a different idea of France from the one that was shaming itself in Paris and Algiers. If Britain now recognised Darlan as the legitimate leader of the French in North Africa, where did that leave de Gaulle and the idea for which he and Britain were supposed to be fighting? Where did it leave the future of Europe? In 1941, Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt had signed the Atlantic Charter, committing themselves to the principles of freedom and self-determination. How could they possibly deal with Darlan, this proconsul of Vichy, as anything other than a temporary expedient? Today, it is hard to comprehend the stakes involved, the prospect of a France unmoored from its Gaullist future. Yet there was little in 1942 to suggest de Gaulle would emerge as the leader of a free, democratic France after the war. In Washington, Roosevelt saw in him the spectre of a future dictator, one he could not control. In London, meanwhile, Churchill's primary concern was to avoid any Anglo-American split. The question we must ask ourselves is not whether we like or do not like what is going on, he warned MPs in a closed
Sample complete. Ready to continue?